Okay, so um, today let's kind of dive into something I think a lot of us have probably dealt with at some point, and that is healing from broken relationships. It doesn't matter if it's betrayal or a really messy breakup or just a situation that was toxic for whatever reason.
Mm.
These experiences can really leave you feeling kind of lost and unsure how to move forward. So we've got some interesting source material today. Uh, Excerpts from a piece called Healing Broken Relationships Through Christ. Now, I know the title might sound pretty specific, but stick with me here because while it is faith-based, there's some surprisingly practical wisdom here that I think can apply to just about anyone, really.
Yeah, that's true. The core message is really about finding restoration and peace. And I think all of us crave that after we've gone through a difficult relationship.
Exactly. And it all starts with kind of acknowledging the pain. Sometimes
Hmm.
we try to just brush things under the rug and pretend we're not hurting. But this piece really emphasizes that recognizing your pain is like the first step to healing. They even start with a verse from Psalms. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit.
It's a powerful image, right? It reminds us that we're not alone in our pain and that seeking support is essential, whether that's from a higher power or from people around us.
Yeah, I love that. And there's this interesting idea of bringing your pain to Jesus, which might sound very specific to Christianity.
Yeah.
But if you think about it more broadly, it's about finding a source of comfort and strength to help you work through those difficult emotions. So whether you find that in prayer or meditation or talking to a trusted friend, the point is to not try to tough it out on your own.
Absolutely. And what I think is fascinating is how the source humanizes Jesus a little bit. By pointing out that he too experienced betrayal. It makes this whole idea of seeking comfort relatable, even if you're not religious. It's about finding that safe space to just be with your feelings, you
Yeah,
know?
makes it feel less intimidating somehow.
Mm.
And it reminds you that pain is a universal human experience. Now, the source also suggests a faith action step, which is journaling or praying about your pain.
Mhm.
And again, this is something that I think can benefit anyone, regardless of your beliefs. Putting your feelings into words, whether you're writing them down or talking them out, can be incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah, it's like taking those swirling thoughts and emotions and giving them a tangible form. It can help you to kind of gain clarity, release tension, and just start to make sense of what you're going through.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've acknowledged the pain now. What? Well, the source kind of dives into this idea of finding peace, starting with a verse from Matthew. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to this deep longing we all have for peace, especially after a relationship ends. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The source suggests letting go of the need for closure.
Whoa, hold on. That sounds tough.
Ah.
But don't we all crave closure after a difficult situation? We want answers, we want apologies, we want explanations.
Of course we do. It's totally natural to want those things. But sometimes we get so hung up on needing that perfect apology or that perfect explanation that we forget about our own peace. The source seems to be saying that true peace might actually come from accepting that we won't always get those things. It's a tough pill to swallow. But think about a time when you held on to anger, waiting for an apology that never came. Did it bring you peace? Or did it just keep you stuck?
That's such a good point. It's like we're holding ourselves hostage to something we can't control. So how do we find that peace then?
Well, the source suggests replacing negative thoughts with positive affirmations from Scripture. Now, even if you're not religious, the psychology behind this is very sound. Think of it as rewiring your brain to focus on hope and strength instead of dwelling on the hurt. It's a technique that's used in a lot of types of therapy, and it can be really powerful in shifting your mindset and reducing anxiety.
So it's like choosing to focus on the positive even when it feels difficult.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your thoughts and directing them towards something that empowers you. The source gives a specific example, repeating a verse from Isaiah. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Think of it like a mindfulness exercise. The act of repetition itself can be calming, even if you don't necessarily believe in the specific words.
Okay, so we've acknowledged the pain we're working on finding peace. But what happens when you're in a relationship that's just plain toxic? How do you know when it's time to walk away?
That's a great question. And it's something the source addresses head on. They start with a verse from Corinthians. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character.
Whoa, That's pretty direct. It really highlights the impact of negative influences in our lives. Like, we can't underestimate how much our relationships shape who we are.
Exactly. And the source goes on to list some pretty clear signs of a toxic relationship: feeling pulled away from your values, experiencing manipulation or emotional harm, feeling constantly drained or unworthy. It's like a checklist of red flags that we often ignore because we're so caught up in the relationship.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in those patterns, especially when you care about the person. But the source seems to be saying that recognizing those patterns is crucial to protecting yourself.
Absolutely. And what's interesting here is the emphasis on self-worth. Toxic relationships often chip away at your sense of value, making you question yourself and your decisions.
Yeah, it's like they slowly erode your confidence and make you doubt your own judgment. So
Hmm.
what's the solution? How do you break free?
Well, the source is very clear on that, set boundaries. It's about recognizing that you have the right to protect yourself both emotionally and physically. And there's this really reassuring message that runs throughout the whole piece, this idea that something better is waiting for you, whether you believe that's guided by a higher power or simply the natural course of life. It's about having faith that things will get better.
Yeah, it's like that saying when one door closes, another one opens. But sometimes it's hard to see that when you're in the middle of a really painful situation, right?
It is. It takes courage to walk away from something that's no longer serving you, even when it feels familiar or comfortable. The source even has a faith step for the situation, praying for wisdom to see the situation clearly and for strength to walk away. You could think about this in a secular way too. It's about taking that time for introspection, really evaluating the relationship and considering what's truly best for you.
That's a really good point. It's like giving yourself permission to put your own well-being first. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Acknowledging the pain and finding peace and recognizing toxicity.
Yeah.
But what about forgiveness? I feel like that's a whole other level of complexity.
You're absolutely right. And the source acknowledges that forgiveness is key to healing, but also incredibly difficult. They use a verse from Colossians to introduce this concept. Bear with each other and forgive one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you.
It's a powerful image, right? This idea that forgiveness is kind of a two-way street, requiring empathy and grace, even when it's really hard. Now, this might seem impossible when you're hurting,
Mhm.
so let's break down what forgiveness really means in this context.
Okay, so the source makes a really important distinction here. They say that forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. And that's huge because it takes the pressure off needing to feel ready to forgive. You can make the choice to forgive even if your emotions haven't caught up yet.
That's really insightful. So it's more about an act of will than a sudden rush of warm feelings.
Precisely, it's about consciously deciding to release the anger and resentment, even if you still feel hurt. And here's another point that might surprise you. The source says that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So you're saying you can forgive someone without needing to rebuild a relationship with them.
Exactly. It acknowledges that some relationships are just too damaging to salvage. And that's okay. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment, not about condoning the other person's actions or pretending that everything is fine. It's about your own peace of mind.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together. Letting go of the need for closure. Choosing to forgive even when it's hard. It's all about taking back your power, isn't it?
It is. And here's where it gets really powerful. The source emphasizes that forgiveness is ultimately for you. It's about freeing your heart from bitterness so that you can move forward and embrace joy. It kind of flips the script on that common perception that forgiveness is about letting the other person off the hook.
So it's not about them at all.
Not entirely, no. It's about recognizing that holding on to anger and resentment only hurts you in the long run. Forgiveness is about reclaiming your own peace and well-being. The source even suggests a faith action step for this, asking yourself, who do I need to forgive today? And then praying for that person and releasing the pain to Jesus. Now, even if you're not religious, think about the power of that action, consciously choosing to release the anger and resentment you're holding on to. It can be incredibly liberating, regardless of how you choose to do it.
It's like you're finally putting down this heavy weight you've been carrying for far too long.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about acknowledging pain, finding peace, letting go of toxic attachments, and embracing forgiveness. But what about the future? How do you even begin to imagine a future after experiencing so much hurt?
Well, the source offers a lot of reassurance on that front. It emphasizes that no matter how broken you feel, there's still a plan for you, that there's still something good waiting to unfold. They use a verse from Romans to illustrate this point. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really comforting to someone who's going through a difficult time. This idea that even painful experiences can have a purpose, that they're not just random events. It's powerful, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think everyone has grappled with that question at some point. Why do bad things happen? This verse seems to be saying that even in those dark moments, there's a bigger plan unfolding. We might not understand it at the time, but it's shaping us, preparing us for something greater.
Yeah, it doesn't take away the pain, of course,
Mm.
but it offers a different perspective. Like
Yeah.
maybe those hardships are part of a bigger story, a story that's still being written.
Exactly. And the source goes on to talk about finding your identity in Christ. Now, even if you're not religious, you can apply that concept more broadly. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't defined by your past relationships.
hmm
You are valuable and worthy of love regardless of what you've been through.
It's about reclaiming your sense of self, right? Like
Yeah.
remembering who you are at your core, beyond the labels and the hurt.
Precisely. And the source suggests a faith step for this as well, finding a hopeful verse and repeating it daily. Think of it as a positive affirmation exercise. Choose a phrase or quote that resonates with you, whether it's from the Bible or a poem or a song, and repeat it to yourself as a reminder of your strength and resilience.
It's like creating your own personal mantra to help you stay focused on the positive.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. And I'm already feeling like I have a new perspective on healing from broken relationships. But before we wrap up, there's one thing that really struck me. The source talks a lot about bringing your burdens to God, but what about seeking support from other people? I mean, we've been talking about finding comfort and strength. And, that can come from our faith, but it can also come from, the people around us, right?
Right, absolutely. The source focuses a lot on the spiritual aspect of healing, but it's so important to remember that we're not meant to go through these things alone. Sometimes we need more than faith to navigate those really tough emotions. Things like therapy, trusted friends, support groups. These can all be invaluable resources on your journey.
Yeah, it's like building a network of support around yourself. People who can listen, offer advice, or just be there to remind you that you're not alone. Exactly. And each of those resources offers something different. Therapy provides a structured space to process your feelings with a trained professional, while friends and support groups offer that sense of shared experience and understanding. It's about finding what works best for you, really.
So as you embark on your own healing journey, you know, remember that you have options, you have resources, and you are not alone.
Beautifully said. And remember, the path to healing isn't always linear. There will be ups and downs, moments of doubt and moments of incredible strength. Just be patient with yourself throughout the process.
And remember what we learned from this piece. Even though it was faith-based, there's so much wisdom there that applies to everyone.
Absolutely, the power of acknowledging your pain, finding peace within yourself, setting boundaries, choosing forgiveness, and ultimately trusting that there's something beautiful ahead. Those are truths that I think transcend any specific belief system.
We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and tools to help you on your own journey toward healing and wholeness.
Remember, you are worthy of love, happiness, and healthy relationships.
And until next time, keep diving deep.